Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for joining today's webinar, Sustain Sales Growth, Do More with Less in an Online World. We are pleased to have Parin Modi, Managing Partner at StratMg Group, to lead today's session. I am going to go ahead and start today with a poll. Okay. Launch, you should now see a poll that says what role/job function best represents you. And if you can please take a moment to answer that question. And please remember to mute your audio. Oops, sorry. Hang on, let me share that again. Great. Well, while you guys are answering the poll, my name is Jordan Shahan, and I am the Admin and Ops Specialist at IMEC. IMEC is a team of industry improvement specialists with the goal of igniting manufacturing excellence in Illinois, including igniting and sustaining sales manufacturing growth. Today's program is also supported by the Illinois Manufacturers Association. The IMA is our country's oldest state manufacturing association, founded in 1893. And represents 4,000 member companies and facilities with an active advocacy agenda and offering opportunities to support manufacturers and their employees in their daily work to build the nation, feed the world, produce life-saving products and power and more. Every day, they are boldly moving makers forward. We'll get started with the presentation momentarily, but first I have a few items to cover. We are recording today's session. Later today or tomorrow, you will receive an email notifying you when the recording is available for on-demand viewing, along with additional resources on this topic, including the slide deck. We invite you to use the chat window to submit questions as they arise during the presentation. I will present questions at the end of today's session. With that, let's get started. Please join me in welcoming Parin Modi, Managing Partner at StratMg. Parin, are you able to share your screen? Great, I can see it now. And just so you know, you are still on mute.
Theoretically, you should be able to hear me too now.
Yes.
So what you didn't hear me say is that I'm a techno peasant, so bear with me. In any event, thank you very much, Jordan, and thank you very much, IMEC, for kicking off this platform, this wonderful platform, to share our respective experiences. And that's what I look at this as. I think that this is an environment where it kicks off a discussion, but it shouldn't necessarily be a be-all and end-all. I would love to continue on with this discussion for anybody that wants to talk about their respective challenges and for us to determine and share what we've done with those kinds of things and continue to brainstorm, because this is such a fast-growing area and it is so unambiguous in its value that it creates that it definitely merits attention, whether you are a salesperson who has a quote on your back, a sales manager, director, or a business owner, or marketing. And that was the perspective on the question. Is it makes a big difference in terms of what it is that you want to hear, depending on your role of the day. So my contact information is on the screen. Please feel free to ping me anytime you have a question. I'm happy to brainstorm with you, happy to share what we've got. But to kick things off, I'm just going to start with what the punchline of my entire conversation is. If people need to check emails and stuff, they know what is that one takeaway that I want people to walk away with from this conversation. And that is, it's not about sales, it's not about marketing, it's about building a relationship. People need to buy into you before people buy from you. And that is an adage that was always true. If you look at manufacturing in the 50s, 60s, 70s, that's how we got business. And if you think about it, those customers have existed for 20, 30 years with the same company. They haven't not had a reason to move to somebody else because of the level of trust that was delivered. A lot of times today, what we end up doing, because we have all these technologies and gadgets and stuff, we want to send out emails and we want to talk about how good we are or how many hundreds of years of engineering experience we have and so on and so forth. But that's not how we do sales anymore. It's about going back to the proven adage of building a relationship, being a trusted resource, being a partner, being honest, and being an extension of their team. That's what gets us business in today's world. So in other words, it's all about taking what was working, but just using a slightly different language, so to speak. So it's all about how do you build that relationship and how do you garner that level of trust up front, but only in a digital world. Because what if you can have personalized conversation? So let's say, for example, if you go to a trade show, everybody walking through the trade show is having a one-on-one conversation with somebody who is walking through your booth. So you are qualifying that person during that conversation and vice versa. What if we could mimic that onto the online side? What if we could have 2,000, 5,000 of those personalized conversations online? Now imagine what your pre-sales looks like. You've got an automation platform that allows you to have these personalized conversations, and you are letting the prospect raise their hand when they want to talk to somebody. And as a result, you're saving time and energy on your sales team, where they're only talking to people that want to talk to them. And of course, from a cost standpoint, it is significantly beneficial for a business to invest in the technology than it is to invest in just multiple people who are cold calling. So from a StratMg standpoint, I really don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but that's what we do. We help manufacturing companies basically build an identity and help build relationships with their prospect that develop a level of trust and then credibility in that order, because that order is important, because that order is how our brains are wired to make decisions. So that's why that order is important, to build a level of trust first, then backing it up with credibility. And that, in our opinion, and we've been doing this for about 10, 12 years now, specifically in manufacturing, that has proven to work every single time. So that's what we're here to share today. What is it that we can do in an online world that allows us to generate a qualified prospect list that want to have a conversation with us, that want to talk to us, build a relationship with us, and even if they don't have an opportunity today, they will continue coming to us when there is, until there is an opportunity. So there are three main components to a sales cycle. But before I go into that, Jordan, can you pop the quick poll real quick?
Yes, I will go ahead and launch the second one. Okay, everyone should see it now.
Everyone but me.
Looks like almost everyone has responded. And so far, the answer, the main answer is both, where 6 out of 10 people both manage and execute. 3 execute and 1 manage.
Okay, perfect. So I did say I was a techno peasant, right? But I'm here talking about technology. So now you kind of get a perspective how complicated this is to implement. So that's the beauty of it, that every small business or mid-sized business needs to leverage this technology to be able to do more with less. So instead of thinking from a sales perspective to say, why don't I get two people who can cold call, and they're going to make X number of calls a day, and Y number of conversations and Z number of qualified conversations, and a certain number of that or a certain subset of that might turn into prospects. That's doing it the hard way. More so because technology today prevents people from getting through. There are gatekeepers. Google has this platform that'll screen calls on its own. So you may never even get to the prospect, right? So it becomes cost prohibitive to do that in today's world. But the question right now is, how do we build a relationship online that feels personalized to that particular prospect, to that particular kind of a company in the sandbox of that particular job function, without having to send out individual emails, making individual phone calls, and so on and so forth. That's what I want to talk about. And in addition to that, the beauty of this process is it adds a layer of transparency. It adds a layer of quantification that allows you as a sales manager, director, marketing manager, director, business owner to say, hey, we sunk $100 in this, it generated 100 leads for us, and of those 100 leads, Y number turned into quotes, Z number turned into revenue, so here's our end-to-end ROI. And which small, mid-sized business, or for that matter, which business does not want that level of transparency? And what I'm here to tell you today is both. One is building a relationship online is very much possible. Number two, having that level of transparency from marketing to your sales pipeline is very much possible as well. And it does not require rocket scientists to do it. That's the beauty of it. So moving on, the first thing is making sure we're relevant, making sure we know who we want to talk to. I've talked to a lot of companies where they think they know who their best customer is. A lot of times they feel like a sales director or a business owner might say, I'm going to run a revenue report, and typically the largest revenue generating customers are our best customers. That isn't always true, because if you start adding certain lenses such as profitability, lifetime value, ease of doing business, how much time, energy are they taking in managing that kind of a customer, it may or it may not change your perspective. But my point is, let's say if you kind of look at your customer list from that perspective, you'll kind of get an idea of who are your best customers, kind of a DNA. And then within your best companies, or the DNA of a company that works out to be your best fit, you would then want to identify the specific job functions that you normally talk to. And any sales manager will tell you who they normally talk to. In this particular case, I've given an example of a project manager at an engineering company that is 700 million plus. Now, in order to connect with this type of a person, we want to understand what are their motivating factors. How are they getting engaged? Are they a decision maker, or are they an influencer in our process? Do they have specific challenges or pain points that we can help address? And if we do have solutions, what would be the typical objections that they would come up with? Now, these pieces of information, I almost guarantee you, all of these pieces of information exists within your company. If you talk to your frontline sales manager or even a director of sales, they will tell you what objections they normally run into. And of course, we all get it, price is the number one. But outside of that, what objections do they normally run into that is specific to your company? Because what you want to do is start addressing that in your online conversation with this particular person. So it's important to know how you as a company differentiate yourself. What challenges do you solve for the project manager in this particular case? And what could their challenges be for them to absorb and move forward with your solution? So now, number one is you know exactly what to say to whom. So moving on from there, the second piece is when do we want to say things like that? So what I have over here on top is what all sales managers and directors and vice presidents will agree is a very rudimentary, basic sales funnel. Or for that matter, I mean, if you want to buy a TV, right? It has nothing to do with the business cycle. But if you want to buy a TV, you first of all, you're going to be aware that you are looking to buy a TV for a Super Bowl party. And then you're going to say, okay, I want to learn about what kinds of TVs are available in the marketplace. And then you're going to evaluate those options given your use cases in terms of your room size and the kind of TV you want and stuff. And then we all want to justify it to our wives, or maybe not in public, but we still want to talk about it and justify a purchase, right? So that's a standard run-of-the-mill sales funnel. What we want to do from there is overlap what we call a marketing funnel. So in other words, what do we want to do with a prospect that allows us to walk that prospect through these different stages of a sales funnel so that we know where they fit, which category do they fit. So for example, when a lead comes in, somebody who's interested, we know that they're probably either kicking the tires or they want to just learn about who you are and what you do. So we want to kind of talk to them about those things, right? And from those things, what I mean is, for example, you want to introduce your company, you want to talk about your testimonials, because again, you're not trying to build credibility at this point, you're just trying to build trust. You're trying to educate them to say, here are some tips. If you're metal casting in this particular case, that, you know, if you are looking to select a metal casting partner, here are the 4 things that you want to be aware of, and that allows you to evaluate what you've got. So what the idea here is, how do you start becoming a dependable resource for this particular prospect? And then from there, what we want to do is move on to the next stage, which means that how do we want to talk to them about how we fit into the picture? So everybody typically knows who their competitors are. Everybody typically knows what they do and how we do things different. So now if you kind of come back to them with a synopsis of what you guys do versus what a typical competitor does, they'll start viewing you objectively. This is where we're kind of getting into the rationalization phase, because they have somebody, the odds are that whoever it is that you are trying to target is working with somebody. So the point is, they know what they're getting with that somebody. But if they're looking at those standard things and comparing how you kind of map to those same categories, it rings a bell. It almost, there's a light bulb effect. Because normally, if you were to send a marketing collateral, they don't normally look at it that way. But when you kind of send a comparison, what you're doing is setting a point of reference. You're kind of getting their attention to say, these are the 3 or 4 or 5 things that you're typically getting, but here's what you could get. So now you planted a seed for them to say, are you getting what you really should get? Because here are the things you'd get working with us, right? So you're kind of getting them to think objectively, while educating them as well, because they may or may not be getting the best that's out there for themselves. So, and by the way, these are all different ways of relating these data points. It could be via email, it could be via phone conversation, and ideally it is kind of interlaced so that it's not just emails, it's not just phone conversations. And the idea is you're building a relationship as you go along. So now when you're kind of interlacing phone, the other person on the other side, the prospect, knows that there is a voice and a name to this conversation. What we call in our world is spray and pray. We don't want to spray and pray. We don't want to send one email to a project manager, a plant manager, a procurement manager, because they all have very different motivation factors. And what's going to happen is you're going to lose them. They're going to tune you out because there's nothing in there that's going to resonate with them. And remember, the key term I use is you want to have a personalized conversation. So if somebody who's a procurement manager who's walking through your booth, having a conversation with you, you are talking about lead times, you're talking about reliability and consistency in on-time delivery. Whereas if somebody who's an engineering, a design engineer, or somebody walking through, you're talking about your engineering capabilities, your throughput, and so on and so forth, right? So you're not having one conversation with every person walking through your booth at a trade show. Similarly, you are not having that same conversation across all your different kinds of prospects. So the idea here is, how do we resonate? And then more importantly, what if we could track. So let's assume that we're sending emails in this first two stages, which is awareness and learn. What if there was something that could tell us how well is that message getting received? So for example, if I sent, as a marketing manager, if I sent a competitive analysis to a particular prospect, did they engage with that? Did that message resonate or not? If they did they go to my website to look at what they did, what we do? If we talk about competency in terms of the equipment we have, did they go to my website to look at the kinds of equipment we have? Because that insight is going to tell you two things. One is your message resonating with them? And if it is resonating, are they getting curious? Are they evaluating you as a partner to say, do I want to have a conversation with this person or not? So this is where technology comes in. So if we were to look at this process, if we were to do these first three stages online, now you're not investing human bandwidth to determine and qualify people. And as you know, anything online is a lot more cost effective than it is with a human doing it manually. So if we can do all of these pieces online, where not only are we having these conversations where we're serving up these bite-sized chunks of pieces of information to educate them on what's going to work for them given what they have versus what they could have. Now, all of a sudden, you've got that pre-sales piece done. And depending on how they engage, you are going to bring a salesperson in because you could gauge their engagement, so to speak. You can score it. And what I mean by scoring it is if somebody goes to a homepage, as a salesperson, you're probably not saying that this is the hottest lead. But if somebody looks at your competitive analysis email, goes to your homepage, goes to, let's say you have a page on the kinds of equipment you have and the square footage of your plant size, goes through your different capabilities on your website. Now you kind of know that maybe this person was not just kicking the tires. Maybe this person was looking at other things, right? So my point being is, what if you could score all these engagements, and then when it crosses a certain level of engagement is when you bring in a salesperson. So now the salesperson is not talking to 1,000 people. They may be talking to 50 people, but they are talking to 50 people that are interested in what you have to say, interested in who you are as a company, what you stand for, what do you offer. And in addition to that, this conversation will also tell you in how you should train your salespeople, because you will know from a completely unambiguous perspective if this message, this storyboard, this line of conversation, if it's resonating with a project manager, if it's resonating with a procurement manager. So it will give you feedback almost within 24 hours for you to start tweaking who you are and what your conversation is when your salesperson meet people in person. So it also can be a great sales training tool. And from a technology standpoint, this is what I was talking about, is what if there was a technology platform that could track your engagement? So for any email you send out to a prospect, what if they could track it to say, did somebody do anything with it? If they did do something with it, what did they do? Did they go to my website? Which page of my website or pages of my website did they go to? What level of engagement was there? And that's where a marketing automation platform kind of helps out. So if you're a business owner, a marketing automation platform is going to allow you to get transparency from the dollar spent on marketing to the sales pipeline created. And that's why it's important. On the sales side of things, it's going to give you transparency to say, I want to know everything that this particular prospect was interested in. So when I have a conversation with them, I can pick up on those topics and tailor my conversation to those topics, as opposed to being an inch deep and a mile wide about who we are as a company. And because of that shift in conversation, the engagement of the salesperson with that prospect is going to be that much more sharper, and the conversion rate is going to be that much more sharper. From a marketing standpoint, of course, it allows you to carve personalized conversations across multiple job functions without having to manually do that. It allows you to score your engagement. So when you're going to sales and telling them these are the 5 people or 50 people you want to have a conversation with, you know that you're not just saying it because it's your opinion. You have empirical evidence to show the sales team to say, here's why you guys need to call on these people. These are the things that these prospects have done. So all of a sudden it becomes a much more transparent sales marketing alignment. And the best part is once sales comes back to you to say, okay, we called on these 50 people. Here are the 27, 28 that were slam dunk. The 15 of them were not on the fence. So we probably want to stay in front of them. And then the others are the other 5 or 10. They're probably not a good fit for us for these reasons. And you take, as a marketing manager, you take those reasons and try to qualify your prospect in your conversation and tweak that piece. So that way marketing and sales kind of work hand in hand. And marketing almost becomes the pre-sales arm of the sales team. So to summarize, the 3 pieces that are extremely important, number 1 is persona. Who are we talking to? What motivates them? Why should they be talking to you? How are you different than the person they work with right now? And then the second piece is, what do you say to them? How often do you say it? In what size chunks? And what cadence and things like that. And the last piece is the technology infrastructure that kind of allows you to thread all these needles, allows you to track the engagement, allows you to align with sales, to automatically send people when they cross a certain threshold of engagement without you having to manually upload it to a CRM system, and so on and so forth. And this marketing infrastructure is basically a marketing automation platform. There are a dime a dozen out there. I mean, even Constant Contact has one. So it's really not a big deal in today's time. You can, if you want to, get some platforms anywhere from $300 to $50,000 a month. So there is one marketing platform for almost every need out there. And today's world, what we're saying is this kind of a platform with the value that it brings to you and the month-to-month investment, it's a no-brainer for every business to utilize. Gone are the days of just MailChimp and Constant Contact, and let's just keep sending emails. The idea here is, how do we take this platform and centralize everything that we do, which basically talks about marketing strategy, right? So marketing and sales strategy, we want to be in the right place at the right time with the right message. And can this automation platform streamline these things for us, because we don't have 15, 20 people doing 15, 20 different things? If we have a small team, if at all, if we have a team of 1 or 2 people, how do we manage all of this? And again, this is where the do more with less kind of comes into play, because this marketing automation platform allows a small business or a mid-sized business to compete with an enterprise. It literally levels the playing field because it allows you to streamline a lot of things that you would have needed a village to execute. So for example, what if we craft this marketing strategy where typically companies will deploy emails today, typically a company will do SEO advertising, they may have phone calls being made from the sales team, they may not do online advertising, they may not do direct mail or print or something, and they may not do other things like social media and stuff. That's okay. But even if you're doing 2 or 3 things, this marketing automation platform will help you do them with congruency. Typically what we've seen is companies kind of do that in silos. So marketing will typically deploy emails. Marketing will do search engine optimization, but they don't necessarily do it in parallel where they leverage each other. In other words, when an email goes out, it has certain keywords, brings them to a certain page so that you enhance the domain authority of that page. So it isn't done in that congruency. Similarly, if you have a pre-sales team making calls, if marketing sends a prospect to the person making the call and they take that call and provide feedback to marketing, now all of a sudden there's this congruency throughout every touch point that a prospect sees. And this platform allows you to bring that alignment across messaging, across the different groups and stuff together congruently. More importantly, it will also track the analytics of each of those things in one place. So you don't have to go to a Constant Contact to get email statistics. You don't have to go to Google Analytics to get search engine optimization statistics. You don't have to go to the telemarketing person's CRM or Salesforce or whatever they have to get their feedback in terms of how many dials it took for them to get through, or what was the conversation, how qualified was the prospect, was there some additional qualification needed, and so on and so forth. It would all be in one place. So my point is, from a strategy standpoint, if you do more than one or two things, you want an automation platform, because then you can control where you drive these people and you can track the engagement. And when you track these engagement, you can score their engagement. And their score will determine if you as a marketing needs to keep talking to them online because you don't want to waste the bandwidth of a salesperson right now, or you want to route it to the sales team. Because if you do want to route it to the sales team, they should come back to you and give you feedback to say, what is the best thing that's working about these qualification process and what isn't. So the point is that, in summary, what a marketing platform does is it gives you the capability to execute across different channels, add congruency to it, add transparency to the metrics all in one place, score the engagements, and monetize them working with sales hand in hand, all in an automated fashion. This is what we mean by doing more with less, if that helps. So moving on, so let's assume you have a strategy in place. The question is, there are a few businesses we talked to there, like which ones should we go after? Which are the top 2 strategies that we should work with and why? What we advocate is typically SEO and email marketing are the first things that any business should start with. Why? Because in manufacturing, they have proven to be the most cost-effective and the most productive marketing strategies, if done right. I mean, we get plenty of business owners that tell us that, hey, there are 1,000 emails in their inbox that they rarely read because they don't know who it came from, and they delete them, so email marketing doesn't work. That is actually not true. It may not work if we do the spray and pray thing that I talked about earlier. But if you carve out personalized messages, if you are becoming a dependable resource where you're educating somebody, you're engaging with somebody, if you're interlacing conversations with, say, a phone and an email, it does wonders. It does wonders at probably half your customer acquisition costs. So yes, email marketing works. But on the flip side, you also want a constant flow of people who submit inquiries through your website, because that is also, email marketing works if you know who you're sending an email to. And you may have a customer database where you want to cross-sell, upsell, or you may have a prospect database from a trade show or people you've collected over a period of time, but that's limited in scope. You want to keep adding to that bucket. And the way to do that, the easiest way, the most cost-effective way, is through SEO. SEO means Google does the work for you. If you do your SEO correctly, Google should be referring people to you. And as long as Google keeps referring people, you should be getting new prospects into your sales funnel. So that's why SEO and Google, SEO and email marketing are the top 2 channels that you should look at. Email and organic search have by far performed well over the last 10 years, every year, hands down. No matter which research report you see, you'll see those things. Moving on. I talked about automation. I talked about personalized conversation. I talked about scoring and gauging the engagement, so to speak. So what does that mean? Is in our world, what we were talking about is, what if marketing becomes the pre-sales aspect of the entire process? So what if you have a database of 500,000, 5,000, 10,000? It doesn't matter what the number is. But if you're having unique conversations across each one of those job functions, across each one of the kinds of companies you deal with, whether it's industry, specific industries, however it is that you choose to segment your target audience, if you were to have those conversations online and track the engagement to make sure that whatever you are serving up to them is working, it is an extremely cost-effective way to generate a prospect database. Plus, because it is cost-effective, because it is trackable, you as a marketing function can now act like a pre-sales function. You as a marketing function can say, I was given $100 in budget, I allocated it this way and generated these conversations and these many people were interested in these conversations. So I can quantify the overall ecosystem that I've created, which all business owners love, which sales managers and sales directors love, because now they have transparency in what these leads have done. So my point being is that's where this process works out well, where the automation platform automatically sends a particular prospect with appropriate information to the sales team so that they can pick up the conversation where marketing left off. So remember, sales lives in the today, because they have a quota to meet. So you want sales to be a closer because you want them to close, not qualify. The more they get people who have a short-term need, the higher the closure rate, conversion rate is going to be. The better they're going to feel, the better the company is going to be in terms of their growth trajectory, and better you as a marketing organization is going to be, because now you're kind of a significant part of the sales strategy, if that makes sense. So I'm going to give you a quick example. This is dated in terms of its in terms of the data, but it'll give you a perspective. This is a view of one automation platform, and what this is doing is it's giving you a life cycle of a lead. In other words, so that's right here. It's a life cycle of a lead. There's this company called Great Dane Trailers, and they're one of the most prominent trailer manufacturer for trucks in the U.S. There is a prospect that we were targeting. And this particular platform allowed us to track every touch point to this particular prospect, whether it was email, whether it was website, whether it was telephone. And it took us months to get through this person, because we knew all the different things that we were serving up to this person and what they were doing with each of those engagements, until they engaged with an email. So we know exactly which message resonated with them at the time when the need came up, and what did they do with that message. So we know they clicked on this, and now we know that they have a particular area of interest. Why? Because we know exactly what they clicked on, but more importantly, we know what they did on the website. So we have a hypothesis that a typical company will do at least 3, 4, 5 things. Now we have a hypothesis of knowing what this particular person is interested in today's time. We prove out that hypothesis by sending them some more detail about that particular topic. And guess what? They engaged further. This solidifies marketing's hypothesis that this person has a relatively important need coming up for this particular topic. They may be educating themselves, they may be researching this particular landscape right now, but we know that this is the area that we need to talk to them more about. And here's the other things that we did that talked about that particular area. And guess what? Between April? So between this month and in about a month and a half, they organically went back to our website, because SEO was in tune with what this person was looking for. So when they went to Google and typed a certain keywords, they were brought to this particular page. So again, this is where this marketing automation platform helps, because we were able to coordinate the congruency between SEO and email marketing, and allows them to guide them through a path of educating them about what they need to know, how they should proceed, what the next steps are. And sure enough, they came to the website and they basically filled out a form. So when they came to the website, again, we know exactly which page they went to, which solidifies our hypothesis from a month and a half ago or something, that they are getting more and more interested because of the kind of content. Here, they may be looking at a particular service type. Here, they were looking at maybe a specific case study for that particular service, or they were looking at the spec sheets or whatever it is for that particular service. So now you know, as a salesperson, you know that they're getting deeper and deeper into becoming a qualified prospect. And then lastly, and the most important piece, is they filled out a form. And when they filled out a form, sure enough, their area of need reflected what we were gauging their engagement on to begin with. So now when a salesperson responds to this form, they know everything that this person has done. And as a result, they can tailor their conversation to the needs of this particular person. And because it's a sharper conversation on the sales side, it becomes a deeper relationship. And a deeper relationship feels less like a salesy relationship. It feels like a true relationship that this prospect will trust you as a resource. And when they trust you as a resource, they're more open to sharing information. They're less guarded. They're more open to telling you if there's an immediate need coming up, and then for you to then basically get to a stage of proposal. And this is also supported by research. In other words, research says that it takes about 10 to 12 marketing and sales touches for somebody to turn from a suspect to a prospect to a lead. And the difference is a suspect is somebody who knows that they need something, but they don't know if you're the right fit. A prospect is saying that, okay, fine, they need something, you do something, so now this person needs to determine if it's the right fit. And a lead is somebody who's just done that, who's determined that I have a need to do this, you have a solution that does this, I believe we are a fit, let's evaluate in detail if we can work together. So it takes time. But when it takes time, it's a lot easier to do it online than it is to do it manually. And this is what we mean by doing more with less. So it's not about leveraging a technology platform. It's about how you carve conversations by using the technology platform. So in other words, the car is important to get you from point A to point B, but the driver is even more important to ensure you're headed in the right direction. Your navigator is more important. So it's important to understand that there are three pieces at play here. So to sum it up in terms of the top 5 takeaways, number 1, know who you are talking to, what motivates them, what is their role in the decision-making process, what objections do they typically have to the solutions you have, and what do you need to say to them. So talking about what you need to say to them, this is a fairly busy slide, but it's a very informative slide. I'm not going to walk through it, but it'll give you a great perspective. So again, on top is the sales funnel that we had talked about. And as a marketing person, here are the kinds of questions you want to ask a prospect in the beginning of the prospect lifecycle. Because if they answer these questions, you can attribute them to say, okay, this is not a person right now that I want a salesperson to talk to. So what this does is when you have a brand new prospect, maybe somebody who just filled in a form on your website requesting information, that person should be over here. And the next set of questions or touch points should be these things with these channels and this kind of content to go into that answers these questions. If they start engaging, then you want to move them on to the next set of questions. And if they engage here, then you know they've moved from an interest stage to now they're interested in the solutions. Let's talk about the solutions. And the same thing. This gives you examples of the different kinds of content types. Like, for example, a lot of manufacturers we talked to, they've got some great videos. 30-second videos, 60-second videos of the machines doing what they do. How about sending those to these prospects and see if they're interested in that? That'll give you a perspective if they're interested in one particular type of a machine versus another, or one particular type of capability versus another. So as they keep engaging, you know which area of the sales funnel they fit in, because you are giving them, you're feeding them content that tells you where they are and what their needs are. Let's say if you, for example, give them a feature benefit of a particular technology platform or service that you offer, if you're a powder coating company or whatever it is, if you offer them a feature benefit and they don't engage, and then you try something else and they don't engage, then maybe they're not in this stage yet. Maybe they don't need an immediate solution. Maybe they need to stay in this learn stage and raise their hand, as in engage more with a certain kind of topic to move them to this stage. Maybe they're not ready yet, right? So prospects will jump from one stage to the other depending on how they engage, but all of that happens electronically. You don't have to manually do it. That's the beauty of this whole thing. And lastly, we talked about this, where you want to have marketing to be the starting pitcher and sales to be the closer. That's who they are. They're good at that. That's what you want them to do anyways. And lastly, I have some links here to kind of get you guys going with some tools from an SEO perspective. I have some metrics. I talked about transparency and quantification, but didn't get into the details. But if you were to measure, you don't need to have analysis paralysis. You can just have 2 or 3 metrics that give you enough of a feedback to know if it's working or if it's not working. I've identified 2 or 3 metrics here to give you a perspective, something to get you going, to get a feel for, are your initiatives mapping to a sales cycle, and if it is, at what cost, which areas need tweaking, and so on and so forth. So hopefully this gives you a perspective, and Jordan, I hope I didn't overstay my welcome.
No, all this information was great. Are you ready for questions now?
Oh, sure, absolutely.
Okay,
So I'll
well,
share my screen.
the first question is, from drawing board to execution, how long would it take to execute on the strategy?
So typically it depends on the level of complexity you want, but let's assume if you're starting from a blank slate, you should be able to get up and running within a couple of months. Because basically, there are plenty of platforms that you can't go wrong with. There's not a lot of capital at risk because you're signing a month-to-month platform. And the thing is, you're probably doing something. Even if you don't have a marketing team, you probably have salespeople sending out emails. So what if you get an automation platform and you only do 2 things? What if you were to take the emails your sales team is sending out right now, import it into this automation platform, and in addition to that, just have the platform tracking your website? That's all. If you just do this much, now the value you've generated is your sales team will know how engaging those emails are. Is anybody doing anything with that? Are they landing anywhere? And more importantly, you will know what's happening on your website, all in one place. You will know where the leads are coming from for those that are coming in as leads, which pages did they go to. So you will get a lot of insights without doing a whole lot of human bandwidth investment and minimal costs. So it could be as little as 1 or 2 months. It could be a lot more sophisticated if you want interoperability into existing infrastructure and stuff like that. But I would suggest a crawl, walk, run approach. Just remember what you're doing now and see if what you can take what you're doing and import it into this platform and see how it can help you do that in a more automated fashion. So now you're saving time, and your time is better used in understanding what's happening as opposed to doing and just making sure you're sending out emails one after the other. Maybe you're sending 10 emails, and what you'll realize is if you were to just send 5, you're going to get more benefit and you're spending less time.
Okay, so you discussed a lot of pros for adapting a marketing automation platform, but how do you pick which platform to use?
So this platform, the main things that it comes down to is what is the level of skill set of the team or the person that's going to use the platform. Or if you're going to get a third party like an agency like us, then it changes the equation, because if you're bringing an agency like us, you're asking an expert to come in, so you're expecting them to add sophistication from day one. If you're doing it in-house, maybe you want a platform that is easy to use. It may not have 75 things, but you don't need 75 things. Maybe it has only 10 things that you need today and tomorrow, and that's good enough. So that's number one, is the skill set, the core skill set. Are you going to do it, or are you going to have somebody else run it for you? Number 2 is budget. The more complexity you add, the higher you go. If you want a sports car, it's going to be more expensive than a family car. So if you're getting more specialized in functionality, your budget is going to come into play. So third thing is timeline. How long do you have before you need to show results to your business owner, to your sales manager or director, or so forth? And the last piece is what expectations are being set internally. So if your business owner is saying that I'm willing to sign on to this platform, but I need 60% sales growth in the next 2 months, well, you're going to need a lot of help. You're going to need a much more sophisticated platform. You're going to need an agency, blah, 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 right? So it comes down to some of those variables that determine what's the best way to go about finding a platform.
So another question, is it best for email marketing content to be developed by a marketing team or sales team, or like a conjunction of both?
So this is a great question because I love a consultant's typical answer is yes. It's always best if it is developed by marketing, but the content comes from sales. Because sales is on the front line. They know everything there is to know. They know what kinds of conversations work. They know what kinds of objections come up. They know what are the most frequently asked questions the customers have. They know what the competitive landscape looks like. What kinds of deals have they lost? Why have they lost those deals? Salespeople, and it could be that majority of it is in their minds, but they are a treasure trove of information. So you want to get them to download that piece of information so that you as marketing can thread those different pieces in different touch points and kind of carve out a storyboard. So we will always talk to sales and marketing because marketing always wants to have nice, pretty looking emails and talk about our value proposition. But that value proposition means very little if it cannot be carved within the context of the customer.
Mm-hmm. So
And that's where sales is critical.
The marketing team really needs to be able to pick the sales team brain to deliver the content.
Absolutely.
And what?
Sorry, Jordan. Just remember, marketing needs to look at themselves as pre-sales. And if they're pre-sales, majority of the feedback should come from sales. So it's not about just getting feedback on the content for the email, but it's also about here's how we're going to engage and get their feedback on what you're going to serve up to them and how often. And more importantly, to also walk through how you're going to score the engagement. Because a salesperson typically knows when a prospect is a good prospect for them within the first 10 minutes of a conversation. So we would always go to a salesperson and say, we're going to think that this is a hot lead if they do this, and that. Do you agree or not? And now if you do that, you as a marketing function are also going to get instant credibility in the eyes of sales. And when you send a lead over, they're going to be more receptive to calling on that person right away, because a lot of times what happens is marketing does all the lead scoring based on what they think they know. They send the leads over and the salesperson like, oh, marketing does this all the time. They just sit on the lead. And if you don't call on that lead within the first 24 or 48 hours, the probability of a good conversation changes drastically. So you want your sales team on board from day one so they know all the rules of engagement have been met when somebody is being asked to call on a lead.
Well, what are some of the other critical factors to success in email marketing and SEO?
So email marketing, the success factors. Email marketing, what I say is basically, it's an artful science. Because there are so many people that spam, it is important for us to stand out, that we're not spamming, we're informing. So it's important to understand how to deploy emails, as in, do we want to deploy the same email to everybody? No. We want to have those emails resonate with the person who's reading it. It needs to be within the context of their sandbox. Number two, your from line. From line as in who is it coming from? That is very important, because if I see an email in my inbox with the from line saying info@xyz.com, I'm not reading it because I know it's coming from a machine. On the other hand, if it's coming from matt@xyzcompany.com, I'm thinking that it's coming from a person. So that changes the one aspect. The other thing is subject lines. Subject line, you could have the best email on earth, but if the subject line is not intriguing enough, nobody's ever going to see your email. So in email marketing, it's testing. So it's about doing some A/B tests with the subject line. If you have a prospect database of say 1,000 records or 5,000 records, take 10% and have them send one subject line versus another and see which one performs better. So this is what I mean by saying artful science, because there is some analytics associated that can guide you in the right direction, but you still have to have the creative ways of standing out. So subject lines are extremely important. Third piece is what we would call image to copy ratios and call to actions. Now, if I get an email with 75 places for me to click, I'm not touching anything. But if I get an email with maybe 2 or 3 links that takes me back to the website of that company, I may choose to click. Right? So there are different aspects of it. more importantly, there are third-party platforms available that allow you to test your emails because different people have different email plans. Somebody may have Outlook, somebody may have Gmail, somebody may have something totally different. So there are third-party platforms which will test how your emails render across different clients and different devices. Somebody may see your email on a phone, somebody may see it on a tablet, somebody may see it on a desktop. So you want your emails to be responsive enough, and you want to know how all of these things kind of come into play. And this is where, again, you start leveraging technology. On the SEO side, SEO has two different functions. One is on-page optimization, which is basically the nuts and bolts and the plumbing of how the website is developed. Because if you don't have the right plumbing, the Google search engine bot, and I use that as a category, it doesn't matter which search engine bot it is, doesn't know where to go. And if it doesn't know where to go, it's not reading what your website is about. So Google needs to, number one, think of Google as a real estate agent that you're trying to sell a house, right? So the idea is you want Google to walk through every room on your website so that it knows exactly what is where and what is it about. Unless it knows all of that, it's not sending people to your house. So that's where the on-page optimization comes in. The off-page optimization piece is all about trust. We need to gain Google's trust for it to feel comfortable to send people to our house. Right? So it's one thing for Google to walk through our entire house, every nook and corner, look at every amenity we have to say, okay, I know exactly what this is about, but I don't know if I want to send somebody because I don't know how much of this is real or not. But now off-page optimization allows you as a company to start gaining Google's trust so that, for example, if I have a company page on LinkedIn, and somebody's searching for a product or service I offer, they go to my LinkedIn page, and from there they click on my company URL and they come to my website. And they engage on my website. They go to one or two pages. So now Google knows that LinkedIn is a legitimate platform. There's nothing fancy or black hat happening. So as a result, if somebody from LinkedIn came to my website, that's legitimate traffic. And if that's legitimate traffic, and if that person engaged on the website, means that's a legitimate person. That means that website is doing something that it's supposed to do. So I like this website. So now LinkedIn has a higher trust level with Google than my website. But because I know that somebody from the known place that I know is legitimate came here and did some good stuff, I'm going to start trusting this company as well. And then it becomes a snowball effect. So it's all about understanding how to enhance your domain authority so that you can gain credibility with Google and trust, so that Google is not hesitant to send you more and more qualified traffic.
And we have another question about the marketing automation platforms. Do these platforms let you know if an email is read versus being immediately deleted?
Some do, yes. So what it will tell you is if it was delivered, if it went to spam, it'll tell you if it was engaged with, if it was open. The challenge, though, is a lot of times some of these exchange servers, like Outlook, for example, a lot of times they will consider an email open even if it is technically not open. In our world, like somebody might have a preview pane that shows a preview of an email, Outlook will consider that open, even though in my case, I may never see the preview, I'll just delete it. So there is a standard deviation of a course correction that you may have to do with the numbers. But yes, it gives you, if it gets forwarded to somebody else, it'll tell you that it was forwarded and so on.
And clicks as well, right?
Absolutely. Clicks is like the bread and butter of an automation platform because it'll score those clicks based on how you want them to be scored and track them.
Great. Well, that is all the questions that have been submitted during your presentation. So thank you so much for sharing this information today. A few reminders before we close out our time together later. I will share an email that contains today's webinar for listening on demand, as well as the presentation handouts. And be sure to visit the IMEC events page to see the other upcoming webinars we're hosting over the next month. On behalf of IMEC, IMA, and Strat Marketing Group, thank you all for attending today's session. Have a good day.
Thank you. Have a good day.